And now, for purposes of introduction, I understand that Essex County is in the house. So Mr. Bill McGahey, if you would approach the podium for purposes of an introduction. Mr. McGahey.
Before I get started, thank you for giving me the microphone, Chairman. Hello, everybody. Before I get started introducing our next speaker, who's a longtime friend of mine, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my family. By the way, Elizabeth, I know you left, but thank you for what you do. I have my children here today. My son Liam, in the back there. My daughter Grace is here. Liam is in the Boy Scouts, and I will tell you, they still have flag raising ceremonies. Jim Kelly, who's here, a colleague from Essex County, he knows this because he worked at the VFW post in Lake Placid. And the kids still do flag raising on Veterans Day, Memorial Day. They go to the cemeteries and pick up the grave flags off there, put new ones down. And I think it's fantastic that they continue to do that. At the Lake Placid Elementary School, they say the Pledge of Allegiance on the intercom, and there's a PA system outside. So when you're in the parking lot, you're dropping your kids off, parents will stop and say the Pledge of Allegiance in the parking lot outside. So I think that's still a great thing. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention Aaron and Reagan Dady, who are here with my kids helping the stuff, and it's good to see them, Tom Dady's daughter. And also my wife, who is here, Allison McGahey, who is testing the waters to be a Supreme Court potential candidate for the 4th JD in the Adirondacks. So we'll be making decisions soon about that. Testing the waters because she can't be a candidate yet. So this next person is a real long-time friend of mine. We worked in the PTAC administration together way back in the 90s. It seems like it was only yesterday. And very glad to be able to do this, Peter. He's the Vice President of the Invest in Education Coalition in Washington, D.C. They advocate for school choice policies to benefit children in every state. He worked with me in the PTAC administration, as I said, where he designed the original STAR program and the charter school law, which, by the way, Governor Hochul, I just think, recently announced that she may be reviving the STAR program this year. It was announced 3 days ago, and how about that after a couple of years of being, defunct? And then the charter schools. Peter, you were amazing back then. You're amazing now. Come on up and say a few words. Thank you, everybody.
I asked Bill when he introduced me to please embellish, and he did not disappoint. So before I get started on the topic of the day, or of the moment anyway, I just want to give a couple of shout outs here. First to Chairman Jerry Kassar, who, what more can be said, but I actually could say a couple more things about him. Jerry's been very kind and to me personally, very decent, and just a great guy, and he worked for equally wonderful public servant, Senator Marty Golden of Brooklyn, who did a great deal on the issue I'm going to talk about this afternoon. And so I just wanted to give that a mention. And also, Bill McGahey and I were very blessed to work for the last Republican governor in this state. It was just a marvelous time in our lives, experience that we had as, in our careers, met, many wonderful people along the way. And I really hope, especially for, younger people, the next generation, that you have that experience, that you have a Republican conservative governor in your life to work for and to serve the state through. It's a career maker. It's really a marvelous experience. So we were very blessed to have that in our time. So with that said, if I could just go off topic for just a moment. If there are any Beals fans in the room, this is useless, irrelevant trivia, but today is the 53rd anniversary of their rooftop session in downtown London, which was featured in that documentary Get Back that came out Thanksgiving time. And as a Beatles fan, I'm a kind of a weird for dates and anniversaries, and it just happens to be today. So it was the last time the Fab Four were together. Who knew, right? So, but back to reality. I'm really delighted that the party chose this topic of strengthening parental control in education. This is a really, really important moment on the issue of education nationwide. And the COVID pandemic has brought that about. And what Bill and I and many of you activists in this room have known about the teachers' unions, about how public education runs, about who it's for and who it is not for. What we've known for 3 decades, most of America has found out in the last 2 years what it's really about, what's really going on. It is for the adults in the system. It is not for the children. That's a broad generalization. You'll find lots of exceptions to that, but that ugly reality really came out in the last 2 years under this COVID situation. And so this is a very important moment, and I'm really going to talk to you about seizing that moment. How can we strengthen parent control and really citizen control of public education? And so, first of all, I want to give a couple of prerequisites, all right? If you're going to involve yourself, or people you know and can talk to want to get more involved in gaining control of public ed, you want to be sure about, you want to have 2 things understood ahead of time. One is, what is your objective? Okay, what do you really want to do? What specific objective or objectives are you after? And what I mean by that is, do you want to change curriculum? Do you want to control property taxes? Do you want to play some sort of governing role? Do you want to be involved in an issue in the district, selecting the next superintendent? Do you want to just be a watchdog and bring accountability? You want to be clear about that. What are your objectives? Do you want to run for school board? Do you want to be in a governing capacity in your local school district? That's the first thing, is what is your objective? The second thing is, you cannot do this by yourself. Okay, what was that speech? Patton said, an army is a team. Okay, this individuality is, it doesn't fit. You have to be a team. You have to have like-minded folks with same objectives to work to do this with. If you're going to involve yourself in public ed, if you're going to play a watchdog role, if you're going to run for office on a board, it's just like campaigns. It's like running for any other office. You have to be part of a team. You have to have people who are with you to divide the labor, to rotate, going to board meetings or whatever it is. And so you can't be alone. And importantly, if you're a parent, or if you're, well, I should say, if you're not a parent, you want to involve yourself with parents, because parents with children in the system are the most directly affected and often the most active as a result. So you want to team up with parents if you yourself are not. You want to have parents always as part of what you're trying to do. So anyway, so with those prerequisites, I want to just outline 3 broad sort of ways to get control, to get involved, and to influence education in the country. And it starts, of course, locally. First, and the 3 ways basically are an accountability kind of watchdog role, running for school board, being on the school board, and third is the school choice issue. So we'll just touch on all 3 of those, and then I hope we can have time for questions. But the first part is being a watchdog, bringing more accountability into a district involves going to board meetings. It involves being informed, doing your homework, being knowledgeable, and again, as part of a group. That's how you're going to get taken seriously. If you're part of a larger group in the community, not necessarily a formally organized group, but just a collection of people that are getting more active in their public school district, you will be taken seriously. You will be speaking for lots of people, so that's very important. Information's power, and Probably most school district meetings that I've been to and been aware of over the years are very sparsely attended. Unless something really is hitting home, they are generally very mundane affairs. There's a smattering of people present, if anybody. So there's not a lot of scrutiny going on at sort of the granular level. I mean, school districts are technically overseen by the state ed department. They can't keep up with them. There's a lot of, voluntary compliance. There's just not a lot of oversight. How they come up with numbers, how they figure out the tax rate, what they decide on curriculum, that's just not well known in my experience. But it's all public information. You have a right to all that. And it just comes down to whether you want to be active and know that stuff and bring it to the public light. So that's one way. Attend school board meetings, get involved amongst a group of you. The second thing is running for school board. Running for school board, again, it's a group effort, as any campaign is, with obviously the candidate, but you need to know the issues, just the requisite campaign requirements, have a presence on social media, get active in print media. A lot of weekly newspapers come out. You can write there for free. Form alliances. There may be people on the board right now, in the minority, so to speak, that you could form alliances with and add to that, add to their numbers on the board. But it also comes down to door-to-door, talking to people door-to-door, and campaigning. It's just basic campaigning 101. It's not complicated, hasn't changed in decades, except for social media. Obviously, that's kind of a new wrinkle we have technologically now. But these are things that you want to be thinking about and are very doable and very possible, especially when the turnout for school board elections is generally very low. You can find out who those voters are. That's all public information. They have to register to vote. They register when they vote. They sign up, so you always know who's voting, so you know whose doors to knock on. And I would just add this one thing, two more things about that, about running. You want to be careful how you handle the teachers, the issue of teachers, teacher unions. I took a shot at them at the opening here. It's very important to nuance that subject because teachers as individuals, most of whom are very dedicated, very friendly, the child likes them, the child's parents likes them. You want to handle that issue very carefully, unions versus individuals. And also, and again, this is just standard in life and standard certainly as candidates, and something that I had to be told, something so obvious, and yet I had to be told this years ago in my early 30s. You have to present well, you have to have likability. I'll never forget a veteran politician telling me, Pete, you have to be liked. It's the most important thing when running for office. And school board politics can get very ugly. You don't want to give back the way you get. You have to rise above that. It's a life lesson that was drilled into me many, many decades ago. Hope I learned it. So anyway, I talked about playing a watchdog role, running for and being on school board, and just the third item is the issue of school choice. So the first two items of kind of school district being a watchdog, organizing parents, being a group of people getting involved. That running for school, those are attempts to change, to bring change, right? You're trying to get more control and bring change within. But this school choice is something that really transcends public education. School choice is an issue of empowering families, empowering parents to have more choices for the education of their children, having more options than the zoned school that you are assigned to based on your mailing address, based on your residential address. School choice is enabling people financially through various means to send their child to a school other than the zoned district school where you live. And so wealthy people with money, have school choice. They can choose what suburb to live in, and they often choose by the quality of the schools. Or they can send their children to private school and very elite private schools, depending on how much money you have. So upper income people have that choice. And the ironic thing about all this is school choice is often thought of as a very, conservative, philosophically conservative issue. It's about competition and choice and all those things that we like. But ironically, it's almost like a horseshoe. It's a very progressive issue, right? If you're enabling lower income people to have the same kinds of options for their children that upper income people have, well, that's pretty progressive, is it not? And if you can change a child's life by putting them in a better school immediately, their whole education, their whole life trajectory changes. When they go from a bad school to a better one, to a quality one, because of a school choice program, and by the way, this has happened in hundreds of thousands of examples across the country already, including here in New York, you can do that. What better government program is there for children, for young people, than to give them a better education, not because you spent gobs more money, not because you're paying more taxes, but you have a choice program that enables children to get a better education. It makes them better citizens, it gets them through school and not drop out. I mean, a quality education in a child is ultimately the best way to improve their lives. And as opposed to this, dependency system that they want to foist on us, where they just bastardize progressivism. So anyway, I just thought that you could talk to any Democrat and say, this is and I've said this to Democrats, this is the most progressive thing you could do, the most effective thing you could do if you want to change lives and improve people's lives and have the next generation better off than the previous one. So anyway, so school choice takes various forms, right? There's your own choice. If you don't like the public school system, put your child in another school. That's difficult in many cases. It costs money, hard to do. If you don't have children if your children are grown up, if they're on their own and they're not school age anymore, support a private school. Volunteer for one, contribute to one. Your church may, if you go to a church or a synagogue or some house of worship, they may be involved in religious education. Be involved with that. Because the more you're involved and the more you can give to that school, the more children they can reach. And which means the more they can peel away from a less ideal public option, right? But where this issue's going now, nationally, is really what's so very, very exciting. And I would really encourage everyone in this room, if you can, and spread the word, to get politically active on this issue, especially in congressional districts. A lot of states have done a lot of great school choice expansion during the pandemic. I mean, West Virginia added a big new, what's called education savings account program. Kentucky added a scholarship tax credit program. Michigan has a big effort going on right now which is basically a citizen petition override of a governor's veto of a school choice bill. So there's lots happening in other states, but nationally, and this is really important to New York, because what we can do in Congress will transcend this, dug-in, recalcitrant legislature we have here in Albany. Get involved in congressional districts on the school choice issue. And what I mean by that is that what we're doing, my organization, Invest in Education Coalition, we are set up in Washington to get Congress to pass school choice legislation, all right? So the Gavin Newsoms and the Kathy Hochul's and all the other dug-in politicians can't stop that. The teacher unions can't stop that in the states if the Congress is stepping in, and it's frankly not akin to, people often call school choice the civil rights of the 21st century, right? And it is, all right? But what makes it, that is why it's so important. And I've had this kind of philosophical jousting with some Republican and conservative members of Congress and other kind of think tanks. well, you know, schools, education, that's a state and local issue, you know, federalism, limited government, Congress shouldn't be doing this. Well, there's a way to do this to be faithful to that philosophy of federalism. There's a way to do this. It's not about spending Title I money, spending federal money, mandating this, mandating that. Those ways are tired and shop-worn and do not work. You can use the tax code, the federal tax code, which Republicans have been using to create incentives and empower individuals and move the economy. You can use the tax code to bring about school choice. I won't bore you with the mechanics. I can stick around and talk more about that. But the upshot is that you can use Congress and federal tax law to bring school choice to children in every state in the union. And you can do it without what I call the Frank Luntz approach. Republicans should just be more like Democrats if they want to get votes, right? Well, no, you can actually be a Republican and be for school choice and not be not do it in a liberal kind of big spending, big government fashion. Okay, so I just want to underscore that. But this election of Glenn Youngkin in Virginia was such an earthquake. And the big margin of difference there was the education issue. Because the Democrat Party, sadly, and it wasn't always the case even in New York, they are so joined at the hip, shoulder, and ankles with the teachers' unions that Terry McAuliffe, who's a very skilled politician and very, got this great personality, and was thought to win that race going away, blew it because he revealed a dirty little secret. That parents shouldn't have any control over their child's education. He said that in the debate. It was one of the biggest debate faux pas in the history of debating. And that really revealed to people, okay, Terry McAuliffe's not on my side, Glenn Youngkin is. And Glenn Youngkin won that race on the education issue, big time. Now, obviously there were other things going on. The Biden administration's been a mess, inflation, Afghanistan, that was kind of in the backdrop. But the education issue was a major concern of voters, and it was not just a few months earlier. It became one. And that got a lot of people's attention in Congress. They're looking at that thinking, let's look at this issue more closely. This is a game changer, and if you have any doubts that it is, the teachers' unions fear this issue. They know it's effective. They know it's transformative, and they are vigorously opposed to it. But that's why it's important for this party and activists to especially work the congressional delegation. Not just Republicans, Democrats too, because Democrats, and we'll see this redistricting plan, I don't know the details of redistricting, but if they're going to try and leave 3 Republicans in the delegation, they're overreaching in my view, because all the districts are bigger upstate. Democrats running are going to have a lot of new territory. They're going to be thinned out. 3 Republicans, is that? So there's a real opportunity to push them. But I would also urge that the Republicans in this state, in Congress, exceptional individuals, very supportive of the issue, they need to be pushed, with all due respect. Because I've been around too long to be told, and I have this congenial attitude from politicians, yeah, I support you, man, I'm with you. They need to deliver this. And they're going to deliver it, not because we make a great argument in DC, not because we have these great expensive lobbyists, not because we're at fundraisers. They're going to do this because of people in this room and thousands like you in these districts, in Western New York, on Long Island, in upstate New York, are pressuring them and telling them and talking to them to get it done. Because a politician can agree with you, but that doesn't make it a priority to them. Their priorities are based on their voices they hear at home. Forgive me if I'm telling you the obvious, but it took me years to understand that. And I've been doing this a long time. It really did, because I thought, oh man, they're with us. Well, except that it's the 12th priority, and nobody gets more than their first 2. So you really have to be mindful of that. I think we have a real opportunity if the Chris Jacobs and Elise Stefanik's and Claudia Tenney's Andrew Garbarino's, and whoever else services, and God willing there'll be more of them. Forgive me if I'm leaving someone out, I know I am. Work those people. Work them. They're good people. I think they're very congenial and agreeable on this. They need to be pushed on this. So when the time comes, this will happen because they're pushing it, because they're hearing it back home. That's the bottom line on that. So anyway, that's about all I have on this. I hope that I hope I can get it across. I just think what we do now on this subject, okay, what we start now on this subject is going to bear fruit a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That's why we're starting in earnest now, because you have to do things now to bear fruit a year, 2, 3 years from now. We have to play the long game here. 1, 2, 3 years is not actually that long, but we can bring real results if we get active now. So anyway, is there time for questions at all, or I can take some, or yes, sir.
Is there something online or elsewhere that you can recommend for people who are running for the school board to win their election?
Boy, that's a great question. I don't know of any online source. I'm sure there are, but let me find that out. I actually don't know of one, but I mean, there's there are basics that transcend every campaign, right? You identify voters, you find out what issues matter.
Can I recommend a little organization I'm familiar with?
Please do.
New Yorkers Family Research Foundation, the organization I direct, will actually be hosting a campaign school March 4th and 5th, very likely back in the same location. Friday and a Saturday seminar on training school board members and other candidates to run for office. So March 4th and 5th, you can put that in your calendar. We'll talk a little more about that. So, question?
Good afternoon. My name is Sam Pirozzolo. I'm here from Staten Island, and it is a pleasure to be here and to hear you say those words. Everything you said is gospel. Not true, it is gospel. The fight for education in New York. In New York City, I was a former CEC president. We don't really have school boards anymore because of mayoral control.
Right.
If there's anything that I can help you do to come into New York City, I was one of the few deposed plaintiffs in the NYSER lawsuit, just returned $500 billion school funding back to New York City or to New York that the mayor had cut out. I'm also a plaintiff in Davis versus New York, which has been labeled a teacher tenure lawsuit. So I would certainly appreciate an opportunity maybe to meet with you.
Sure.
And see what we can do to put some things together. New York City now has a new schools chancellor, David Banks, who's not only pro-charter school, he's the founder of charter schools. I don't know how all this is going to shake out, but thank you for what you said. Thank you for what you're doing. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And let me say something about Staten Island, too. Thank you. So Staten Island has a lot of Catholic schools. And anybody representing that area, Nicole Malliotakis, even, and God willing, she will continue to represent that area. But I don't want to imply picking on Nicole at all when I say this. But Nicole believes in this. She's co-sponsored legislation as an assembly member. Nicole needs to hear from you on Staten Island to make this a priority on her list. Because Congress members, any politicians, and many of you have been elected, you know what I'm saying. You are deluged with issues. You serve on multiple committees. You have interest groups. People are coming at you from every direction. So you have to compete with that. And the Catholic schools on Long Island, part of the Archdiocese of New York, can bring a lot of pressure to whoever represents that district, regardless of party. That's really critical. I'm really glad you're here, and I hope we can build on that. So, any others?
Thank you very much.
Mark Shishkevich, U.S. Senate candidate. I was always a pro-choice when it comes to school, pro-life only. But I want to talk to you more offline about the tax code that you're referring to.
Sure.
In New York City, when you talk about talking in school board meetings and things of that nature, a lot of the school board meetings in New York City now are via Zoom, and a lot of people aren't allowed to speak. It's like they have their select number of people. There's a lot of parents that are complaining that their voices aren't heard when they try to do the school board meetings. Do you have any suggestions for them?
We'll see how long they can keep that up. I mean, I can't believe it's going to last indefinitely. And I think a lot of people agree with your sentiment there. I mean, the MTA, the congestion pricing is another issue like that involves the public, and yet they're relegated to these Zoom meetings. That's probably a question in terms of how to undo that, but it could be on the legislative agenda perhaps this year. Like, this stuff's got to end, folks. I mean, if we're not wearing masks anymore, why are we still doing Zoom? Really? That's a great issue you raised. I don't have a more concrete answer.
A card too, so
Yeah, of course.
Steve Geller in the back, question?
I got it.
A little bit of commentary on what you said. I've been on a school board in Deer Washington for 5 years. I've been fighting, keeping my head against the wall for 5 years. They tried to impeach me 3 years ago and lost. Okay? The biggest problem with schools in this state right now is 5 miles down the road, state ed. They have a gun to every school district's head. It's ready to cut their money, take away their superintendent's license, or get rid of that Board of Education if they don't go along with what they say. Whether it's masks, whether it's critical race theory, whatever garbage they come out with to ruin our kids' lives in this state. To beat that back, you can get more candidates on school boards across the state that are like-minded like us to fight back and push back against state ed and all their nonsense. I'll leave it at that.
Well said.
All right, at that, I think we're going to have any other questions to the back. Peter's going to be back to field any more questions, and feel free to do that. Peter, thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks.